Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, depending on where you're joining us from. My name is Erin, and I am the Content Manager at BrightTALK for the BI and Analytics community. And I'm here today with Florian Duteau. He is the CEO of Dataiku. Florian, thank you so much for joining me for this Ask the Expert session today.
Thank you, Erin, for inviting me.
Absolutely. So just before we kick things off, I'll give everyone in the audience a little bit more background about myself and tell you all how you can get involved with us here today. So as I mentioned, I am a content manager here at BrightTALK, and I manage the BI and analytics community. And what that means is I specialize in creating and curating content around the topics of big data, analytics, data management, BI, machine learning, and AI technologies. And I do this globally by collaborating with experts all over the world, like Florian, to create content that will help keep our audience informed and engaged on what's happening in the industry. So if you have any questions about this series, or if you or someone you know would like to participate in Ask the Expert, then you can email me at egenio@brighttalk.com, or you can contact me via social media at the handles below using hashtag AskTheExpert. So, and lastly, before we dive into the conversation, just a couple details. If you'd like to engage with the larger BrightTALK community about today's session, then you can tweet hashtag AskTheExpert to @BrightTALK. And of course, since this is a live Q&A session, this is the perfect opportunity to have your questions answered by Florian today. So I highly encourage you to use the questions box on your screen to send in questions throughout the webinar around the topics of AI, machine learning, and the future of those technologies. So we'll try to get those answered for you. And as always, don't forget to rate the webinar and provide any comments at the end if you can, because we definitely appreciate the feedback. So with that, Florian, I'm going to turn things over to you now. If you'd like to give us a bit of background on yourself and just chat a little bit about our topic for today, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you, Erin. So myself, I do not qualify myself usually as a data scientist or even an AI specialist, but I've been working on those technologies for about 22 years, and I've been doing natural language processing, classification, and perhaps even data science before it was named data science back in the beginning of this century. Always working in startup companies, doing various domains like search engine, social gaming, advertising, and benefiting from that experience. In the last 5 years, I've been focusing on one company called Dataiku, and Dataiku is a data science platform where we actually help organizations to be more successful in terms of implementing AI to enable and augment their internal services. And I've been doing this very fun venture for the last 5 years.
Excellent, great. Okay, thank you so much for that background. So for this Ask the Expert session, we're going to get Florian's take on some frequently asked questions and compelling topics around the subject of AI, its evolution, and its future potential as well. So what better individual to help us out there than the CEO of a data science platform company? So let's get started here. So a good place to start off, I think, is to touch on some popular perceptions of AI in the media, and then maybe also chat a little bit about the difference between consumer AI and enterprise AI. So it seems like today, everybody's talking about AI in the news, the media, but typically what we're hearing is a lot of talk about consumer AI, like home devices, self-driving cars, and things like that. So, Florian, what role does or will AI play in the enterprise, and what does this mean for the average business?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's very easy to grasp what AI can be for the consumer, because when we are talking AI for the consumer, we are actually thinking about new devices, new physical objects that are very different from the objects that we use on a daily basis. We are talking about Alexa, we are talking about self-driving cars, new way to interact with our environment. So the artificial intelligence or robotic part of AI is easy to grasp. But the reality is that probably most of the impact of AI on the world will actually be within the enterprise for things that are less shiny, which are business processes, and how AI changes on a daily basis how you actually work within your company, meaning how you actually process your email, how you interact with customers, how you take decisions, and how overall the organization is running. And the fact is that probably most of the business processes that you have today, like handling a customer complaint, will be in the next 5 to 10 years enabled and transformed through AI, meaning that part of the whole process will actually be managed automatically as opposed to being managed manually, meaning with a human in the loop. And that's kind of the real revolution here.
Got it. So that's a pretty short timeline. About 5 years, you said. So we can be definitely seeing some of these changes happening in the very near future. So I guess the next thing to touch on is what is the difference between enterprise AI and simply just doing data science? And how do technologies like deep learning and machine learning fit into this equation?
Yeah, enterprise AI can be disconcerting because to some extent we are talking about things, or ideas that have been floating around for decades. For instance, applying machine learning or statistical techniques to automatically detect fraud in financial services is something that people have been doing since, well, the early 80s, if not the 70s. But so, and data science itself is just an evolution in a sense of those techniques. I guess some breakthrough of enterprise AI is that you actually add specific capabilities on top of classical machine learning or statistical techniques in order to actually fully automate the decision process. And I would say that there are probably 3 key characteristics to actually have a full AI within an organization. One is that you want your automated system to actually perceive and look at data the way humans look at data, meaning, for instance, be able to detect or take a decision based on a physical letter that you can scan and act on this as the human eye would act upon it. You want your AI to be able to interact with other systems or with humans in a very elaborate manner, so interaction part, meaning you don't just want to build systems that are a new app or a new web interface or a web application. You want systems that can interact, discuss, have conversations with other humans. And the third part is about having strategical decision making, meaning you want your AI to actually be goal-seeking and optimize for something. It's not just about like forecasting whether this thing looks like or does not look like a fraud. You want your AI to actually take a decision and act upon it, trying to actually optimize for a given business goal, which could be minimize the time you spend on frauds while detecting most of the frauds. And so those 3 components, perceiving real data, interacting for real, and having a strategical mindset are the difference between classical machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Awesome. Okay, good. Those are some great distinctions. Okay. So now that we've kind of established, a baseline for what defines enterprise AI versus data science and how machine learning kind of fits into that, maybe now we can touch on a couple of the more exciting use cases for enterprise AI that are in existence today. So, Florian, what are some examples of enterprise AI and some real-life use cases for companies?
Yeah, you've got as many use cases as you've got industries. Almost like every industry literally can benefit from those technologies. It's just a matter of do you have the data, do you have the opportunity, do you have the means, and do you have the investments possibly. But for instance, in the marketing landscape, AI is used more and more in order to fully automate and optimize the messaging platform and the way you actually activate your marketing channels, meaning that you rely more and more on AI globally in order to segment your customers, generate a targeted message for those, and then decide on which channels, offline or online, you can leverage those messaging and push them to the customers. So meaning that you do text generation, channel optimization, targeting of the customer in a very holistic manner. That's one example. A very different example is, for instance, manufacturing and assembly lines in high-tech factories, where sensor data is used in real time in order to understand what is happening in practice in the assembly line, what are the conditions for building a new piece, which could be a microchip or a very specific and part of, I don't know, an airplane engine or an automotive part, and understand what are the risks in terms of quality and control on this piece, leveraging cameras that instead of humans checking the piece, each piece manually, would automatically detect defaults on those pieces and adapt the cadence of the assembly line. And so things that were not possible previously, such as having assembly lines that adapt per the condition, per the characteristics of the materials you provide, and so on, in order to get faster or not, things that would actually rely a lot on human intuition in order to get there and optimize the productivity. Now rely on the ability to have cameras and AIs that look at the assembly line and automatically optimize it. So those kind of use cases are actually multiple across all the industries.
Great. So given that there are so many compelling use cases, what have you seen so far with regard to businesses actually implementing AI for these use cases? Are there businesses already doing enterprise AI, or is this still somewhat rare?
Well, as any questions regarding maturity of an ecosystem, you've got always two sides of the coin. You could say that most of the businesses are looking forward to doing more enterprise AI, but like only a few are actually there today. And especially, meaning a very ambitious view of enterprise AI would be a view where actually you've got like a systematic perspective on AI within the organization, meaning a complete understanding of what is automated and what is manual within your organization, and such kind of a global system that would help you coordinate all those subsystems within your organization. Well, it looks kind of weird, like the way I explain it, but imagine, let's say, a customer interaction within an organization. Today, you actually have like lots and lots of different softwares, CRMs, marketing software, content generation software, different third parties to help you understand what are the good customers or what are the good leads that you can use and leverage in order to get things done. And I'm sure, Erin, that you actually yourself leverage on a daily basis those softwares. And so today, those softwares are like very disconnected. All of them are trying to implement their own machine learning techniques in order to optimize for something, but you don't really have anything that understands what choices they made, or they interact globally, or even have a global perspective of the state of a given customer or the state of a given initiative. And so the jump to enterprise AI is actually getting to the level of automation, where an organization has actually kind of an automated system that tries to actually fill that gap, like end-to-end, having something that tries to optimize the life of a customer, the interaction of a customer with the organization, let's say. And so we are still far from that, realistically speaking.
Got it. So considering we are still somewhat far away from that, what are some good starting points? So for companies that aren't anywhere near executing enterprise AI, how can they get started realistically?
I think that they feel. I think that the challenge of AI is that if you try to compare yourself immediately to Google or Facebook or Tesla as an organization, you could get scared, meaning you won't immediately start building self-driving cars or the equivalent for your own business. So there is this step-by-step approach where it's not just about like starting small for the benefit of starting small, but understanding that there are like some key initiatives with high ROI where you can implement more advanced techniques, machine learning and AI in order to get first results. And specifically, focus, what I've seen failing over and over again was the perspective of using AI for side projects. Let's say, maybe we would like to launch a new product or start some new sideshow for the company. Maybe we could use that as a lab for AI in the organization and see what it means for us. If you start AI with this kind of mindset, well, maybe you learn something about yourself or about AI, but it's very unlikely that you will actually start transforming the company, meaning start transforming the way the company uses data, leverages data in order to optimize its own process. So I think that a good step is actually to focus and understand what are the key problems of the company. It's key like scalability issues. It's the key problem the company wants to solve, and apply AI on a first topic in this domain, even if it's hard, and try to get a first success there.
Got it. So as the CEO of Dataiku, what does Dataiku bring to the mix in terms of enterprise AI?
So at Dataiku, we actually have a strong belief, which I call sometimes the inclusive approach to enterprise AI. And I say inclusive approach to enterprise AI as opposed to elite approach to enterprise AI. An approach that is common among especially tech companies is to see AI as a way to actually build new products from scratch. And actually one way to do it is to have on one side of your company very talented technologists, software developers, data scientists, and so on, that are building and imagining new products. And then you've got the business side of the company that is like driving that, pushing that to the market, and so on. I think this is kind of like an elite approach where you can find the best software developers to as fast as possible release things to the market. For some domains it makes sense, but I think that for most organizations you actually need to get to a more inclusive approach to this, where side by side, business-minded people within the organization need to kind of like work with technologists within the organization and start understanding what AI can mean for the organization, start working on first projects, understand better the data, the objective, what's doable and what's not, and like enable themselves, one another, in order to get there and get new skills. And I guess it's a matter, meaning the issue of AI, one main issue is actually adoption. Meaning, do we really want AI? Is it really useful, and so on? And I guess in order to get there, you actually need to have every side of an organization that actually is part of the building of those new AI projects. It cannot be like yet another funny geek project that ends up being used or not within the organization. It must be like something that is built jointly by different departments within any company. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically what you're saying is it requires the buy-in of the entire organization, and for it to be viewed as not just a side project, but an important investment for the future of the company and the business.
Yeah, correct. And the only way to get this buy-in, from my perspective, is actually to have everyone participating to the building of such projects, meaning like analysts from the business analysts must be able to actually participate to those AI projects. And so as a company, what we actually help is actually having all parties involved in the building of AI projects.
Right. So one aspect that we haven't touched on yet is open source. So it would be great to get your perspective on how open source plays into the future of AI, especially for the enterprise.
Yeah. I think that open source is definitely a determining factor in order to actually have AI implemented for the enterprise. Why? It's because everything in terms of data storage, data infrastructure, computation, and algorithms, meaning all the core components today are, or most of them at least, are built as open source pieces of software. And it's kind of important because today, the best way to actually get a state-of-the-art or very close state-of-the-art machine learning algorithm is actually to go for open source. That's like a new trend in technology and software. That's it. But then the challenge for the enterprise is actually to make sure that they can integrate this open source. Meaning most companies are actually not software organization, meaning they don't really know how to manage software components and integrate them in a meaningful way, especially on the long run. So a challenge actually for those organizations is to find ways or softwares and platforms where they can benefit from open source technologies and also mitigate the risk of those open source technologies as they evolve very, very rapidly, and also so put at risk possibly some of the things they are building, leveraging those.
Great. So you talked a little bit about how being successful with enterprise AI requires collaboration within the organization and for everybody to be involved. So this kind of is a good transition into the next question about building an infrastructure for success with AI. And the question is, aside from just technology, what else are the keys to success in the AI era?
So yeah, aside from technology, as I mentioned, I guess that the global enablement of the organization is important, meaning having like skills within the business people, meaning understanding and implementing AI. But there is also a matter of processes and the operationalization of AI, which is setting up within your organization a process for finding, validating, designing, and then pushing in production and maintaining all those AI initiatives. Meaning you really need to think about it. It cannot be like as any other projects within your organization or as any, let's say, software projects or new internal app you're building, because those AI projects depends on data, have some kind of like experimental setup around it. They've got some like feedback loops. So you have to think about the way you want to build and maintain them in a specific way. It's yet another beast, meaning you have to, well, a concrete example is that you have to think about the data you can get, and possibly you can get more data or new data in order to make your AI project successful. And so you have to get into this way of thinking that is not traditional.
Got it. So take a very intentional approach to implementation. So moving on in the conversation, no discussion about enterprise AI would be complete without touching on governance and data security, of course. So what is the role of data governance and security in AI?
Yeah, that's a great question, because implicitly, I mean, when you ask this question, especially those days, everyone is thinking about privacy, because that's a key, privacy and bias, because that's like the key topics involving AI is, are we sure that we understand what the AI is doing, or it actually uses my personal data? And are we sure that AI, when we give to AI the power to decide, whether we are not like replicating bias that everyone has and that are just transmitted to the AI because of the data we are using. And basically, those domains are things that are not completely under control today, that we are still learning how to use and how to mitigate for. So new initiatives and GDPR certainly made people more conscious of what data they had, how they were using it, and so we are getting there. Understanding AI and in terms of if an AI is fair and what does it mean, is still an area where basically we are not sure what it means or what our intention should be. It's today too easy to train an AI that is leveraging some data that could have gender or racial biases, and just because of the way it is used would replicate an existing situation. But how you actually make it so that an AI is not biased itself is still to some extent an open problem.
Absolutely. We only have ourselves to be the judge of what is biased or not, so it's very difficult to implement an AI solution that doesn't inherently incorporate some of our human biases, so I definitely see your point there. We do have, coming in from the audience, some really great questions. I'd like to kind of move on into the live Q&A portion of the session today and just take a few minutes to address some of these and have Florian weigh in. So the first question that we've had come in from the audience is talking about enterprise AI. What could be the use case for AI to be in software development / service company that can help improve efficiency?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are lots of initiatives in that domain that are getting, some of them are getting mature. So some of them are related to automating quality control in software by actually leveraging existing quality assurance and test in the software and leveraging AI to automate the test in your software. And very promising because in software development activity, quality control is a huge center of cost, for sure. And you've got even more promising domains in AI where you actually try to leverage AI to understand and mine existing code base, leveraging, among other things, open source, in order to actually suggest to developers things they should do or possibly find patterns of defaults and bugs within their software by trying to understand what is good code versus bad code, which is probably a great way to actually leverage AI to make software development easier. So very, very promising, but still probably those technologies are not completely mature.
Okay. So we have a multi-part question here. Can AI be helpful in intrusion detection and prevention on network layer? And in the era of e-wallets and e-payments, is there a way that AI can do a prevention of hacks or frauds to these e-wallets and e-payment gateways? And if so, how?
Yeah. So in my understanding, actually, most of the large-scale providers for network or for network connectivity and payment and network infrastructure are leveraging some machine learning techniques in order to find and to detect intrusion and prevent those intrusions. And so today I would say that this is, well, it's always a question of like, is it AI or is it not AI? Today, those techniques would mostly be about looking at statistical patterns in the data, in the network exchange, or where the transaction is coming from and so on, in order to decide whether it looks fraudulent or not. So to some extent, it's some form of AI, but rather passive. In the future, and things that people are working on are very interesting in that domain, you imagine more and more having more active systems and proactive systems that would act as agents, proactively looking for errors or like open gateways within your system or possible faults, or possibly try to act adversely within anyone like trying to enter your system. And kind of these movies from the 80s where you had the AI trying to compete with one another and possibly one of them trying to do to launch nuclear missiles. As in those movies from the 80s, AI that would actually try to defend your network or your transactions. But that's kind of like still fairly new and not really in production. These last things I mentioned.
Got it. Great. So we have a question about blockchain and AI. How can AI supplement or complement blockchain?
Ooh, this kind of question where you take two hype keywords and try to put them in the same sentence and see if the word collides or not. AI and blockchain. So actually, those days, well, AI and blockchain are, in a sense, very independent technologies. And today, so an interesting way they could actually interact, which is rather subtle, is that if you want really to scale AI at some point, you would probably need to have AI in a fairly distributed manner, meaning having lots of different systems with their own AIs trying to exchange data and information in order to reach a conclusion, like neurons or brains or humans in a group. So they actually have to interact in order to actually come to a conclusion. And you could argue that probably systems that are similar to blockchain, in the sense like systems where you can understand what was said and safely exchange information, would be used for those AIs in order to safely interact. But like we are almost talking about some science fiction when we are talking about AI and blockchain in the same sentence, in my understanding.
Got it. So kind of the frontier, the unknown frontier in a sense.
Yeah, meaning like AI, yeah, do AI have a language? Do they speak to one another? Will it start happening? Will they be picking a blockchain? And will they exchange love through bitcoins? We don't know.
Got it. So we have another question here that's sort of asking for clarification between machine learning versus AI. The question is, how is machine learning actually different or similar to AI?
So strictly speaking, I see machine learning as being a subset of AI, meaning in a sense, machine learning is a specific aspect of AI, which is about learning. But artificial intelligence, more globally, is learning, but also perceiving, like I can see, I can hear, and so on, as a human, interacting, meaning I can speak and converse, and strategizing or optimizing, meaning I can take decisions that are about like optimizing a given goal. So learning is just one aspect globally.
Got it. Great. Okay. Yeah. No, that's a great distinction. I think there is a lot of people sometimes equate machine learning and AI as being the same thing, when really, AI is a much more expanded concept than just simply machine learning. So the next question that we have here is, how do you see a link between computer vision and AI?
Well, it's kind of the same as before. I mean, computer vision is one aspect of AI. It's one aspect of the perception capabilities mimicking human that you need to have in order to get to AI. Computer vision is probably specific those days because that's one aspect of AI that is the easiest to comprehend, meaning it's the small feat of having an AI that can recognize your face or can be used in order to drive a car. And so it's also these days working pretty well, and especially in the last few years, computer vision made tremendous progress.
Right. Just had another question come in. So AI is an effective technology for IoT?
Ooh, it's yet again this kind of question where you use two keywords and you see they collide and if the universe explodes or not. Ooh. And well, indeed, meaning it's an effective technology for IoT in the sense, it's an effective technology in the marketing of IoT, meaning at the end of the day, if you have like connected objects, what you do expect for those objects would be to actually be a little more intelligent because they are connected as opposed to not being intelligent. Because if you think about it, the real value of a connected watch wouldn't be the fact that it's connected. It would be the fact that it can tell you something useful to do thanks to the data it collected. So interestingly, IoT without some AI at the end would probably not prove that valuable.
Got it. We have two questions that came in about analytics and AI, and I guess I'll just combine them because it makes sense to just kind of bundle them together. The questions are, how does analytics fit into the evolution of AI for businesses, and is predictive analytics a kind of AI?
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's more like to me, it's more like an evolution where doing predictive analytics is not new, and also to some extent AI is not new. Meaning some industries have been doing predictive analytics literally for decades. But predictive analytics is today mainstream and commonly used in order to understand your customers, score your customers, optimize your pricing, and so on. But more and more, there is a next step, which is AI, where you don't just leverage predictive analytics to do a forecast, but you use more globally AI to optimize for something, integrate them into an automated business system, and actually completely automate decision making. So it's this gap. Sometimes people were mentioning a gap between prediction and prescription that doesn't. Well, it kind of captures it, but not completely. Meaning it's not because you predict that you can prescribe something. That's kind of the idea, but it's even more than that. It's like you predict with predictive analytics, but you actually also, at the end of the day, you will want to completely automate, which actually requires far more effort.
Great. So two more questions remaining. The first one is, what is immature AI? I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but maybe if you have any points to add.
Yeah, I say that I guess this question could be interpreted in multiple manners, but I guess that most organizations are still in the process of implementing AI, and not systematizing AI, meaning that they need to understand how it will integrate and completely change their business process. Today, lots of initiatives are about using AI as just a shiny button on the side of an application, like the clipper. It's almost as the clipper in the old version of Microsoft Office. The thing on the side that everybody, reception of such a clipper was not great. At the end of the day, it's almost at this one. And so immature AI could be this clipper, and mature AI could be, AI actually used in order to optimize the experience of the user, of the customer. And we are not there yet.
Got it. Okay, great. Yeah. We just had another question come in, so now we have 2 questions still. This question is about AI in medical science. So the user asks, how far are we from using effective AI in medical science? I have seen lots of use cases, but how effective and useful are they? Recently, especially in the cases of cancer detection.
No, so here I must admit I'm not a specialist of medical science, and which is a very complex topic in itself. What I know for sure is that AI starts to be used in order to complement the diagnosis, and especially help in situations where the doctor would have lots and lots of data to actually analyze in order to get to a conclusion. Imagine, for instance, when you get ECG or EEG data from a patient over the course of several hours. So imagine literally meters and meters of paper with your EEG or ECG data, and you are looking for patterns in order to diagnose if there is a problem or not in your heart, in your brain, and so on. So for a human being, it actually takes also hours in order to get and detect those patterns. And so more and more, you've got techniques and AI that can help in order to actually simplify the work of the doctor. So we are kind of there. In terms of providing a full diagnosis, in my understanding, you still rely on human experience. You today are using AI as a way to augment the capacity of the experts.
Right, absolutely, and it relies on a lot of data accumulation to detect patterns before we can truly use it for diagnostic purposes. So we just had another question come in. What could be the negative impact of AI?
I guess
That's
the person asking, I guess the person asking the question has not seen Terminator nor Terminator 2. No. No, well, a funny, in the enterprise, let's say, a funny negative impact of AI could, for instance, be that your job could be less interesting. I don't know. If you are into sales or into marketing, let's say, if you're into marketing and you really like to write new content, but suddenly you've got an AI that actually is almost perfect in terms of correcting your sentences, can generate lots of content and so on. So most of your work is no longer about writing the sentences themselves, but more trying to find what are the concepts you want to work on and the bullet points, and then the AI would take it from here. Perhaps it would be more effective, but also it might be that suddenly your job is less interesting. So what do you really want? That's actually a good question. I took this example out of the blue, but you could have, in many situations, you could argue that the AI could help us being more effective in a sense, but also make our job pointless.
hitting me where it hurts, right? That's my job, content writer. So let's hope that's not for a while at least. So we have one more question here to cover, and it's, can you recommend some strategies for people in IT to use to convince their organization of the value of enterprise AI?
Yeah, I guess that you've got one perspective that is always working is to find a way to build a project or a proof of concept that works. Because at the end of the day, most people within your business organization would have heard about AI, most probably. They would have read the book. They would have get into the articles in different websites, and they would have seen great webinars on BrightTALK and so on. So they probably know the concepts, probably, before you try to convince them, meaning like everyone is talking about AI. But they probably don't believe that you can do it within your organization at a reasonable cost. So even if it's like a very limited form of proof of concept or proof of value, finding a way to show that AI can work within the organization is actually one step in the right direction.
Great. We just had one more question come in. The user says, I mentioned it in relation to chatbots of Facebook going haywire recently, and similar stuff happened with Google too in the recent past. Oh, this is just a comment. They're clarifying their question about the negative impact of AI.
Oh, yeah, makes sense. Meaning that's actually a very interesting phenomenon where more and more AI is actually used and actually leverage specific kind of techniques where the system is trying to learn about itself and try new things, and meaning in a way can enter in some weird feedback loops over itself and start going completely berserk. And that's funny because when you see that at the level of a chatbot on Facebook, it's funny. But the thing is that the same thing could happen in systems that could be, well, less funny to go haywire.
Right.
So
less funny, more catastrophic.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So great. It looks like those are all the questions that we have submitted for today. So we'll wrap up the session here in a few seconds, but before we do, I just want to remind the audience to check out the attachment section after the webinar today for a peek at some really great informative white papers from Dataiku. And thank you so much to all of you in the audience for listening in to this episode of Ask the Expert. And of course, Florian, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us your take on the future of AI and its enterprise potential as well. I think we had some great insights and some excellent questions here. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot, Erin, and thanks a lot to the audience for all those great questions.
Absolutely. Excellent. Well, have a great rest of your day, everybody, and tune in to our next episode as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.